My AFL Finals predictions. Let's get right into it. Quarterfinals, we're going to start with Sydney taking on the Giants. The Battle of the Bridge. Now, this game has happened twice already this year, and Sydney won both the fixtures. Now, before I get into my tips, I must specify that I will be choosing an upset. I will try one upset every single round of finals. Although, our first round of finals, there's two games, and then the grand final. So it might be a little bit more difficult or easier said than done to strictly predict every game. To have a fucking, an upset every single round. Now, in this video, I know I've got straight into it, but I'm going to be going into depth of why I've tipped a particular team, and essentially not just tipping them, but giving you a reason, okay? Now, I'm going to go the Giants against Sydney. Sydney, their form has not been immaculate. Now, I must also specify that this will probably be my upset tip of the round. Most people are going to tip the Swans, but I prefer the Giants, to be completely honest with you. Looking at previous games, if we just go on the ladder here, the Swans, they have won their last three, but one of them was beating Adelaide by 30 points, beating Essendon by 40-odd points, and then scraping a win against the Pies where they really weren't good. They got dominated the 2 weeks before that. So I'm not as bullish on Geelong. Conversely, the Giants, they did lose to the Dogs in the last round, but victories against Fremantle, Brisbane away from home, which is outstanding, Hawthorn and Melbourne, they've won some pretty impressive games. The reality is, I think the Giants are more suited towards the finals. I just think they are. And if we look at their injury list as well, because that's very important, they might get Isaac coming back. They might get Jake Riccardi back. Maybe that's it. And then conversely for the Swans, might be getting Justin McInerney back. Tom Papley's a maybe, so we're not entirely sure. I just had to go with the Giants here. I just backed them in a little bit more than the Swans, but it must be said, the Swans are more likely to win. But you know the drill. Let's tip the Giants as my first round victor. Next up, we've got, this is in order. The first game, I think, is Hawthorn and the Dogs, but I'm just doing it in this sort of squiggle predictor format. The Lions take on Carlton. Carlton, I am not entirely sure when Harry Mackay is back. We all know that Kerno should be back by the finals. I think Harry Mackay will be back as well. So they should have a fully fit team in that respect with those two. The reality is they're going to be rough. They haven't played football in a while. I'm not expecting them to make the world or to light the world on fire. And for that, I'm going with the Brisbane Lions. Quite simply, the Brisbane Lions are just way too informed for me to predict against. And that's sort of the premises I'm going for. Head-to-head as well, I believe Brisbane do much better than... But let me just quickly check. Bada bing, bada boom. Head-to-head is... No, sorry. Carlton won... Yeah, earlier this year, Carlton did win by the 1 point. But apart from that, Brisbane tend to get the W's over them. Carlton, the only win the last 5 is against West Coast. Brisbane, conversely, the only 2 losses they've had were when they kicked 8 goals 16 against the Giants. So inaccurate, should have won that. And when they lost by a point against the Pies away from home. So I think the Lions win, and I think that's a guarantee. Elimination final number 2, one of these teams will be going out. The Dogs take on Hawthorn, and I am genuinely stuck. For the other 3 games, I'm pretty confident with who I'm tipping, but this game is a genuine 50-50. It is almost impossible to predict, really. I think a big sticking point is when will Day be coming back? He didn't break his collarbone, but I'm not sure if he will be coming back for the game. I honestly don't know. And then conversely for the Dogs, Riley West should be coming back, and maybe Jason Johannesson if they want to play him. But that's pretty much it. Both relatively fit teams. You see, I'm going to back Hockball and go with the Hawthorn Football Club. Another away win. I've gone 2 away teams, 1 home team winning. That's pretty unheard of. But the reality is both these teams are insanely in form. I mean, if you look at head-to-heads this season, Hawthorn winning the only game, they played 2 games in 2024. Hawthorn won the most recent and the earlier one this season. the Doggies won. But that was when Hawthorn were in really poor form. The last 5 games, both teams have won 4. The only loss for the Dogs against Adelaide away from home. The only loss for Hawthorn against the Giants away from home. So they're beating good teams and just missing against other good teams. It's really hard to predict, but the reality is, I think Hawthorn have a game style that is just so inevitable right now and so exciting that I don't see the Dogs getting through it. But I must say, I have flipped back and forth on this. I have said, you know what? The defense of Hawthorn won't be able to cope with some of those forwards. Hawthorn don't have game winners like Bontempelli. You know, the finals game of the Dogs, the Bont, Chalor, Libba, it stands up. Whereas Hawthorn, we've not seen it. It's hard to predict. But I think the thing is with Hawthorn is they also have the vibe. You know, they haven't played a final for a while. The energy, the crowd's going to be there. And that's why I've gone with Hawthorn. Now, the last game between Port Adelaide and Geelong. I've seen a lot of people go with Geelong, but I'm going to go with Port Adelaide. I do not back Geelong at all. And that's purely on the basis that I think the game style of Geelong is not suited for finals. We've seen it before. I think the excitement of Port Adelaide will be there once again. A young, exciting players. Horne-Francis, Butters, Rosie. And I think that midfield is just going to overpower Geelong, especially on the inside, with a combination of Boak, Drew, Wines. I think that's too strong for Geelong. And even though Geelong are a very defensively solid team and they're a good system, I think they won't be able to get over the line against Port Adelaide. Even though they're young and, you know, maybe they're a bit questionable here and there, we're going to go with Port Adelaide. So we've got 2 semi-finals. We have got arguably 2 of the best teams in the comp. Sydney take on Brisbane. And then I have got Geelong taking on Hawthorn. Now, we'll start with the Geelong-Hawthorn. I'm going to go with Hawthorn again, to be completely honest with you. Why am I going with Hawthorn again? A bit of bias. I love watching Hawthorn. And I just think game style is so antithetical. We have got the fast-paced Hawks against the controlled wisdom of Geelong. The young exuberance of Hawthorn versus the experienced finals team of Geelong, and I'm just going to back Hawthorn. This next game though, Sydney taking on Brisbane, is a little bit different. Sydney are a team that I think traditionally have struggled in finals. In recent years, you give the wood to Brisbane. They've got more finals experience, and I think this is a genuine 50-50. I know it's in Sydney, but you know what? And I can't believe I'm saying this, and this is probably a world's first. I'm going with Sydney to drop out in straight sets. And obviously, if they drop out of straight sets, I'm going to be going with the Brisbane fucking Lions to win that game. Now, is that going to happen? Probably not. But I just backed Brisbane in. I backed them in. I think Brisbane have to make the prelims at least with their form. Prelims now, and we have got 1 Victorian team in Hawthorn. We've got a New South Walian team in the Giants, an Adelaide team, South Australian team in Port Adelaide, and a Queensland team in Brisbane. Now, I think the Giants will be too strong for Hawthorn. I think Hawthorn, it's just a year too early to be doing these sort of things. So we're going to go with the Giants there. Once again, game style, I backed them in more in finals. This other game's a bit hard. Brisbane, I backed them against Port Adelaide. I think Port Adelaide, they have this weird knack of losing prelims at home. Richmond, the Dogs, and I don't think it's going to change. Yeah, I'm going to be going with the Brisbane Lions to win that prelim as well. Which is crazy to say that Brisbane can do this, but you know what? I got to go with an upset. And then finally, the grand final. If it is to be the Giants who take on Brisbane, I've got Brisbane losing back-to-back grand finals. Quite different to their early 2000s success where they won 3 or 4 grand finals. They're losing 2 out of 2. So what you see right there is my grand final prediction. I had the Giants winning. Now, it is important to note that out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, there are 9 games in the finals. Upsets, I've gone with Giants beating Sydney as an upset. Hawthorn beating the Dogs as an upset. Lions beating Swans would be an upset. Hawks beating Geelong would be an upset away from home. Brisbane beating Port away from home would be an upset as well. And the Giants taking on Brisbane at home, probably Brisbane would be the favourite. So I've gone with 6 out of 9 upsets, right? This is what I think will happen. I think people will laugh in saying Sydney out in straight sets, you dumb fuck. But Sydney's form has been atrocious. I think coming up against the Giants for Sydney is dangerous. We all know how good Giants are in the finals. They're a different beast in the finals, the Giants. They have a fight about them. And against Brisbane, if they come up against Brisbane, Sydney in that semi-final, they are used to this. They can win away from home. They are finals veterans. They made the fucking grand final last year, and the form they're in is insane. Other things you'll be laughing at me for. I feel like they're probably the main one is me having Sydney out and having Brisbane lose the grand final after making it. But will they beat the Giants? Maybe they will, but we'll wait and see. So here's to the Giants winning.